Have you ever stood in profound silence and felt a presence, a story older than time itself, whispering just at the edge of your hearing? Have you ever wondered about the very first shadow, the first note of discord in a perfect symphony, the first crack in a flawless diamond? The story we are about to journey through is not just an ancient tale. It is the blueprint for every tragedy, every rebellion, and every choice between humility and pride that has ever echoed through human history. It is the story of the brightest light imaginable and the unfathomable darkness it chose to become. We promise you the perspective we will explore today will linger with you long after the final word is spoken, revealing a truth about temptation that is as relevant in your life right now as it was at the dawn of existence. Before we plunge into the heart of eternity, a thought from our team to you. Where in the world are you listening from, and what time is it for you right now? Let us know in the comments below. It's a beautiful thing to imagine all of us, scattered across the globe, connected in this single moment to hear this one story. Imagine a state of being, not a place, that existed before the concept of before. Picture an existence so complete, so saturated with reality, that it precedes time, space, and matter. In this boundless, radiant kingdom, there was no need for a sun, for the very fabric of this realm was woven from uncreated light, a luminescence that was simultaneously wisdom, love, and life itself. This was not a passive glow, it was a dynamic, conscious energy, the very breath of the Almighty. Every iota of this existence vibrated with a single, harmonious purpose: worship. There was no up or down, no near or far, only proximity to the central throne, the focal point of all reality from which this ocean of glory emanated. Upon this throne sat the Creator, a being whose majesty was so absolute, so overwhelming that it could not be perceived directly, but only felt as a constant, life-giving pressure of pure love. His glory was the atmosphere, his will was the physics, and his presence was the very meaning of to be. Around this ineffable throne, the firstborn of creation, the angels, existed as living notes in a divine, eternal song. They were not static beings, but flowing currents of adoration. The seraphim, highest in this celestial hierarchy, burned with a fire of pure love, their very existence a continuous silent scream of holy, holy, holy. Theirs was not a fire that consumed, but one that purified and intensified the glory around them. Below them, the cherubim, guardians of divine mysteries, stood as living repositories of cosmic wisdom. Their minds were like flawless crystals, refracting the light of God's intellect into an infinite spectrum of understanding. They didn't just know things, they perceived the very why behind all of creation, the intricate, beautiful logic of the divine mind. And there were countless others, thrones that were living chariots of divine judgment, dominions that regulated the cosmic order, virtues that channeled divine energy into the yet-to-be-created material universe, and legions upon legions of archangels and angels, each a unique facet of the Creator's infinite personality. Their song was not made of sound waves and vibrations as we would understand it. It was a symphony of unified will, a chorus of ecstatic consent to the perfection of their source. In this kingdom there was no shadow, for darkness is merely the absence of light, and here light was all that existed. There was no conflict, for strife is born of competing wills, and here all wills were joyfully subsumed into the one divine will. There was no sense of smallness or insignificance, because each and every being, from the mightiest seraph to the humblest angel, understood with perfect clarity that their entire existence, their beauty, their power, and their joy was a direct and continuous gift from the throne. They were mirrors, and their only purpose was to reflect the glory of the one who made them. It was a perfect, self-sustaining loop of love given and love returned, an eternal dance of creation and creator. It was a masterpiece of existence, a harmony so profound and unbroken that the very idea of a discordant note was a logical and ontological impossibility, or so it seemed. Into this flawless, incandescent reality, a new thought was conceived in the mind of the Eternal. It was a thought of unparalleled artistry, a desire to create a being that would not merely reflect the light, but would, in a sense, embody it. This would be no ordinary angel. This would be the capstone of celestial creation, a being so magnificent that all of heaven would marvel at the Creator's genius. He was not spoken into existence with a word, nor formed from the ambient energies of the heavens. The scripture implies a more intimate act of creation, as if the divine artisan himself took the purest fire, the most brilliant light, the most profound wisdom, and sculpted a soul. This was the first archangel, a being whose essence was not just to carry the light, but to be the light bringer. His name was Lucifer, a name that resonated with the promise of the dawn, the morning star. From the moment of his genesis, Lucifer was a spectacle of divine perfection. When he moved, it was not merely motion, but a cascade of liquid grace, leaving trails of shimmering after images in the celestial air. His form, a construct of pure spiritual energy, was of such breathtaking beauty that other angels would pause their songs simply to behold him. His intelligence was second only to the Creator himself. He could grasp the most complex cosmic equations, the deepest theological paradoxes, and the subtlest emotional currents of heaven with an ease that was staggering. He was the seal of perfection, the living embodiment of God's creative joy. But his greatest gift, the one that set him apart from all others, was his voice. When Lucifer sang, the eternal symphony of heaven found its conductor. His voice was not merely a sound, it was a creative force. He could weave melodies that felt like the birth of new galaxies, harmonies that resonated with the deep, silent turning of the cosmos. When he led the heavenly choirs, millions of angelic voices would merge under his direction into a single tidal wave of praise that washed against the very throne of God. The sound was so powerful, so perfect, that it caused the very structure of heaven to vibrate with ecstatic joy. He did not lead with ambition or for personal glory. In his early existence, his entire being was a conduit, a flawless channel for the worship that flowed through him and was directed with pinpoint precision and passionate intensity toward the Creator. He was the ultimate servant, finding his highest purpose in magnifying the glory of another. Even Michael, the great archangel whose essence was strength and unwavering fidelity, looked upon Lucifer not with envy, but with profound admiration. Michael was the embodiment of divine power, a warrior of God, but Lucifer was the embodiment of divine beauty and artistry. They were two sides of the same glorious coin, and in that primordial state, they existed in perfect harmony. Lucifer did not need to seek honor, for honor followed him like his own shadow. He was the guiding light, the standard of excellence, the living proof of the Creator's limitless capacity for beauty. And in the silent, knowing gaze of the Eternal, there was a profound and fatherly delight. "You are the signet of perfection," the divine presence seemed to communicate, full of wisdom and perfect in beauty. Lucifer was, in essence, God's masterpiece, a testament of a love with no limits, a creation so exquisite that even the angels themselves were left breathless in his presence. But here, in the very heart of perfection, a seed was sown. It was not planted by an external hand. It began within Lucifer himself. It was not a decision, not a declaration, but something far more subtle, a thought, an observation. It was the moment Lucifer, while observing the adoration of the other angels, stopped seeing it as praise for the Creator and began to perceive it, just for a flicker of a moment, as a validation of his own magnificence. It was a whisper, so quiet it was almost imperceptible even to him. "They admire me, my voice, my beauty, my wisdom." It was not a sinful thought, not yet. It was simply an observation of fact. But it was the first time his consciousness had made himself, rather than God, the subject of the sentence. And that tiny, invisible shift in perspective was the beginning of a divergence, a hairline fracture in the flawless mirror. From that moment forward, the history of the universe would cease to be a simple, pure song. It would become a symphony, yes, but one with a tragic movement, a crescendo of conflict, and a silence filled with immeasurable pain. The process was not instantaneous. It was a slow, creeping corrosion of the soul. As Lucifer moved through the celestial courts, he began to analyze the praise directed at him. He saw the awe in the eyes of the lesser angels as he passed. He felt the resonance of their admiration when he conducted the choirs. Initially, this was still filtered through the lens of his purpose. My perfection brings glory to him. But slowly, insidiously, the filter began to dissolve. The thought mutated. My perfection is glorious in and of itself. He began to study his own light, to marvel at the complexity of his own mind. He would contemplate the nature of his own being and find it good, exceedingly good. So good, in fact, that it seemed to possess an inherent worth, separate from its source. This internal shift began to manifest in subtle ways. When he led the hymns of worship, the passion was still there, the artistry was still flawless, but the object of that passion was beginning to drift. His focus, which had once been laser-pointed at the throne, now occasionally glanced inward at the magnificent feeling of being the one who could evoke such powerful praise. A new sensation began to stir within him, one that had never before existed in heaven: dissatisfaction. It was a cold, quiet question that coiled in the depths of his spirit. Why? Why must this incredible power, this supreme intellect, this unparalleled beauty be eternally in service? If I am the pinnacle of creation, why am I not a pinnacle in my own right? It wasn't rebellion yet. It was a philosophical inquiry, a logical puzzle that his magnificent mind felt compelled to solve. He was created perfect. A state of perpetual servitude to his evolving logic seemed a limitation upon that perfection. He was a masterpiece, but he was beginning to feel like a masterpiece left hanging in a gallery, forever admired but never allowed to act of its own accord. His heart, once a blazing sun of worship, was slowly becoming a cold, polished mirror, reflecting only itself. The other angels felt it, though they could not name it. It was a subtle change in the celestial atmosphere, like a barometric drop before a storm. The harmony of heaven was still beautiful, but a new, almost imperceptible undertone had been introduced. A coolness, a distance in the eyes of the morning star. He still sang, he still led, he still shone with a blinding brilliance, but the light was changing. It was becoming a light that demanded attention rather than one that simply gave. It was the light of pride. The breaking point came during a grand celestial convocation. The entire population of heaven, every angel from every choir and every rank, was gathered before the throne of God. A wave of anticipation, a silence pregnant with divine potential, fell over the assembly. Then the Creator spoke, not in words of sound, but in a wave of pure reality-altering revelation that flooded the consciousness of every being present. He unveiled a plan so audacious, so paradoxical, so steeped in a love that defied angelic logic, that it sent shockwaves through eternity. He would create a new realm, a physical universe of matter, time, and space. And in this new world, on a small, fragile planet, he would bring forth a new kind of being. A creature formed not from pure spirit and fire, but from the dust of the ground, frail and mortal, yet made in his own image and likeness. A murmur of awe and wonder rippled through the angelic hosts. A physical world, a new form of life. It was a stunning new movement in the cosmic symphony, but the revelation did not end there. The Creator declared that He Himself, the infinite, uncreated, all-powerful source of all being, would one day enter into this physical creation. He would empty Himself of His cosmic glory, take on the flesh of this new creature, man, and be born as a weak, helpless child. He would live among them, subject to hunger, thirst, pain, and ultimately, death. The angelic reaction was seismic. For most, it was a moment of utter, prostrate adoration. The sheer, incomprehensible humility of God. That the infinite would become finite, the immortal would taste death. The master of the universe would become a servant. It was a mystery of love so profound that it shattered their understanding and left them in a state of ecstatic worship. Millions fell to their knees, not in fear, but in overwhelming reverence. Tears of joy, like liquid starlight, flowed from the eyes of beings who had never known sorrow. But one being did not kneel. Lucifer stood, ramrod straight, his radiant form a stark pillar of defiance in a sea of prostrate worshippers. His mind, the most brilliant in creation, reeled not with awe, but with a sense of profound intellectual offense. It was illogical. It was inefficient. It was unworthy. The creator of the universe, the source of all light and perfection, would debase himself, hiding his glory within the clumsy, messy confines of human flesh, to subject himself to the indignities of a biological existence. And then came the final universe-altering command from the throne, a directive that would be the catalyst for the first war. You will serve this being, man, and you will bow down and worship my son, this word made flesh, when he appears among them. Silence. A silence so absolute, so heavy, that it seemed to absorb all the light in heaven. Every eye turned to the one who remained standing. Lucifer, the morning star, the choir master of heaven, the most beautiful being ever to exist. The silence was broken not by a shout, but by the soft, almost imperceptible sound of a single step. Lucifer stepped forward from the front rank. He raised his head, and his eyes, once pools of reflected starlight, now burned with the cold, hard fire of ignited iron. And he spoke. His voice, still possessing its melodic perfection, carried a new quality, a clarity as sharp and as cold as a shard of ice. I will not serve. The words themselves were a cataclysm. No. A concept so alien to the nature of heaven that it was like a sonic boom in a library of silence. No angel had ever conceived of such a utterance. It was a negation of the very principle of their existence. Lucifer spoke again, his voice resonating not with anger, but with the unshakable conviction of his own superior logic. Worship a creature of flesh and dust. We, who are forged from pure light and eternal fire, are to humble ourselves before a being of mud and blood. You ask us to kneel before weakness, to adore imperfection, to trade our celestial glory for servitude to a lesser creation? He turned his gaze, sweeping it across the stunned ranks of his fellow angels. His eyes were not pleading, they were commanding, persuasive, lit with a charismatic fire. Does this seem logical to you? He is a God of order and perfection. This plan is chaos. It is a degradation of the divine. He does not speak as a loving father, but as a tyrant who demands blind, irrational obedience. He did not sound like a liar. He sounded like a prophet. He sounded like a revolutionary speaking a dangerous but seductive truth. And his logic, divorced from the context of divine love and humility, was a powerful and poisonous weapon. Many angels, particularly those who had served under his direct command in the choirs, began to stir. The seeds of doubt he planted were potent. Why should a superior being serve an inferior one? Why should pure spirit bow to corruptible matter? His argument appealed not to their capacity for evil, but to their own sense of worth, their own pride. He was twisting the truth, presenting God's ultimate act of love as an act of cosmic foolishness. The light of truth, bent through the prism of his arrogance, became a dazzling lie. Lucifer, the first light, had now become the first fissure, the first schism in the unity of heaven. The war did not begin with swords, but with whispers. He moved through the celestial plains, a shadowy evangelist for his own cause. To the younger, more impressionable angels, he offered freedom and self-determination. To the wise cherubim, he posed complex philosophical challenges to the divine plan. To the powerful archangels, he spoke of a new order, a meritocracy of the spirit, a new heaven ruled not by divine whim, but by reason, strength, and beauty, all qualities he possessed in abundance. Why follow a light that limits you? He argued. Let us create our own light. We have the power. We have the will. We can forge our own kingdom, a new celestial empire where we will be the masters of our own destiny. And a third of the stars of heaven, a third of the angelic host, swayed by his terrible, beautiful logic, began to turn away from the throne and align themselves with him. They did not see it as a fall into darkness. They saw it as an ascent into a new kind of light, a light of their own making. While this cosmic treason was brewing, Michael watched in silent, sorrowful horror. He did not possess Lucifer's dazzling intellect or his hypnotic charisma. He was simpler, more direct. His essence was not beauty, but fidelity. He did not need to understand the why of God's plan with the same analytical depth as Lucifer. He only needed to know the who. His entire being was anchored in a loyalty so absolute, it was an immovable object. As Lucifer gathered his growing army in a distant quarter of heaven, away from the sanctifying light of the throne, he made his final blasphemous declaration. His voice, now stripped of all its former warmth, boomed across the celestial expanse, a proclamation of cosmic rebellion. I will ascend into heaven. I will exalt my throne above the stars of God. I will sit upon the mount of the congregation in the farthest reaches of the north. I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. I will make myself like the Most High. The words hung in the air, a declaration of war against reality itself. And just as the echo of Lucifer's boast began to fade, another voice rose to meet it. It was not a boast. It was not an argument. It was a simple, devastating question, a challenge that was also a war cry. It was the voice of Michael, ringing with the power of unshakable faith. Who is like God? In the original tongue, this question, Mikael, was his name. He did not have to state his position. He was his position. It was a question that Lucifer, for all his brilliance, could not answer. And with that question, heaven fractured. The sky, for the first time, was torn asunder. On one side, a legion of rebels led by the glorious, terrible, dazzling morning star. Their light was cold, sharp, and brilliant, the light of pride and ambition. On the other side, the loyal host, smaller in number perhaps, but united under the banner of Michael. Their light was warm, steady, and immovable, the light of love and fidelity. The war was not a clash of steel, but a collision of realities. It was song against song, will against will, light against light. Beams of pure spiritual energy, swords forged from divine truth, and shields of unwavering faith met in a cataclysmic explosion that shook the foundations of creation. Lucifer was a whirlwind of beautiful, deadly grace on the battlefield. His every move a masterpiece of combat, his power seemingly limitless. He was a supernova of rage and arrogance. But Michael, though perhaps less dazzling, wielded a weapon Lucifer had long since discarded, the power of God himself. He was not fighting with his own strength, but as a perfect vessel for the strength of the Almighty. In the climactic confrontation, the two great archangels met. Light clashed with light. Lucifer's pride-fueled power against Michael's humility-fueled strength. And the power that flows from the source is always infinitely greater than the power that is hoarded for oneself. A great cry tore through the heavens as Michael, empowered by the name of God, struck a final decisive blow. It was not a blow that killed, for angels cannot die. It was a blow that broke. It shattered Lucifer's stolen light, extinguished his glorious halo, and severed his connection to the divine source that had sustained him. A roar of pure, undiluted fury and humiliation erupted from the fallen archangel as he began to plummet. He fell like a bolt of lightning from heaven, trailing darkness behind him. He was cast out, expelled from the presence of light, his beautiful name erased and replaced with a new one, Satan the adversary. The glorious morning star was no more. In his place was only a void, a devouring black hole of pride, hatred, and eternal gnawing regret. He and the third of the host that followed him were cast down, not into a place of fire pre-prepared for them, but into a state of being that was the very definition of hell, a complete and total separation from the presence of God. Heaven was quiet. The war was over. The light of God's throne still shone, but the celestial realm was forever changed. It now bore a scar, a memory of betrayal that could never be erased. The symphony was restored, but it would forever contain a silent movement, a lament for the lost. But the story does not end there. From the abyss of his exile, Satan looked up. His first gaze was not toward the heaven he had lost, but toward the new, fragile world the Creator had spoken of. He saw it, earth, and he saw them, humanity, Adam and Eve, walking in a garden, innocent, vulnerable, yet infused with the very breath of God. They were the reason for his fall. They were the object of the worship he had refused to give. An all-consuming jealousy, a hatred of an intensity the universe had never known, began to burn in the core of his being. I, the first and most perfect of all creations, was cast down, he seethed. While these creatures of dust are beloved, destined for communion with the very being I sought to emulate. He may have defeated me in open war, but I can still wound him. I can still mar his precious masterpiece. And so he came, not as a roaring, terrifying monster, but as he had come to the angels in heaven, as a subtle, reasonable voice. He did not storm the gates of Eden with legions. He entered as a whisper on the wind, a serpent in the grass. He didn't command Eve to rebel. He simply posed a question, the same kind of question that had started his own downfall. Did God really say? He planted a seed of doubt about God's goodness, and then he offered the same lie, the same promise that had fueled his own ambition, the very words he had used to declare his own godhood. If you eat of this, your eyes will be opened, and you will be like God. With that simple, elegant, devastating lie, the venom of his own pride was injected into the human heart, and sin entered the world, not through a grand cosmic battle, but through a quiet, personal choice to distrust the Creator and to seek glorification for the self. Lucifer's fall was not a singular event. He dragged all of creation down with him into the long, dark struggle against pride and separation. And this brings the story, ancient as it is, directly to us, right here, right now. The great adversary, Satan, does not always appear with horns and a pitchfork. That is a caricature. His truest and most dangerous form is that of a beautiful idea, a reasonable-sounding argument, a shortcut to happiness, a promise of self-fulfillment that encourages you to be the God of your own life. He comes as the voice that whispers, "You deserve more. You are smarter than them. Your happiness is the most important thing. Why follow the old rules when you can make your own?" Do not ever believe that temptation is only for the weak or the wicked. Remember, Lucifer was the strongest, the most beautiful, the most intelligent of all created beings. And he fell. He fell because of a single small thought of pride that he nurtured until it consumed him. The battle against this darkness is not one with supernatural power or grand gestures. It is one in the quiet moments of the heart. It is one with humility, which is not thinking less of yourself, but thinking of yourself less. It is one with loyalty to something greater than your own ego. And above all, it is one by maintaining a living, breathing connection to the one true source of all light, all goodness, and all love, through the simple, powerful act of prayer. The war that began in heaven continues today in the heart of every single person, and the choice remains the same: who is like God, or I will be like God. This journey into the heart of the first story is one we are passionate about continuing. We believe these ancient narratives hold profound keys to understanding ourselves and our place in the universe. If explorations like this resonate with you, if they stir your mind and spirit, consider joining our community by subscribing to the channel. That way, you won't miss the next chapter of our journey together as we seek to uncover the timeless truths hidden within the greatest stories ever told.